Joining me live in studio, Dan Nelson. Dan is our resident historian here on Live Your True Life. And I love Dan's stories because they're interesting, they're timely, but they're all real. Dan, great to have you in studio today.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, Ashley.
Hey, so I'm interested, what kind of story do you have for us today?
Well, this is an interesting one, particularly if you're into literature. This was a story that I grew up hearing. It was about my great-great-great grandfather, William Harper Smither, and his family in Oxford, Lafayette County, Mississippi. And as it was pronounced, it was William Hapa Smither. But he was an accomplished individual. And so I grew up hearing from my grandmother that William Faulkner, the famous novelist, by many considered to be the finest American novelist, certainly in terms of Southern literature, had written about our family in his novels. So, I sort of had that in the back of my head. At the time I heard that, I wasn't taking the right literature classes or whatever, so I didn't really pursue who William Faulkner was. And then as I got older, I started checking into it, and I'm like, well, this can't be, because William Faulkner basically showed up in Oxford after my Smither family had already moved on. And so they didn't overlap, so it didn't really make sense. So then later, when I went back and took a look at it, I actually found that William Faulkner was writing about stories that were told to him by his ancestors. And the Faulkner home was only about 3 doors away from where the current Smither home was. And it was actually the home of his great-grandfather, or his grandfather, his maternal great-grandfather, Charles G. Butler. And so a lot of these stories came from those ancestors, and so they had this sort of fictional county name. I'd probably slaughter it, but it was something like Yoknapatawpha that he used, and he gave every character in his book these sort of wild names. So, so like, how would I possibly figure out whether or not my ancestors were written about in Faulkner's books? Or was that even true? Did the Smithers ever know the Butlers? Well, then I finally came across information showing that Jacob Thompson, who somebody we'll talk about in another episode, was written about in The Sound and the Fury, one of Faulkner's most famous books, as Jason Compson. So he would play with the names a little bit. So yeah, it'd be easy if my Smithers just became Stithers or something like that. I haven't come across that character yet. So just to further this along in terms of the relationship, it turned out that William Harper Smither, my ancestor, and Charles G. Butler were best friends. Smither actually probated the will for Butler, and they served on the board of police together. So now it all started to make more sense. So I'm pretty certain that what my grandmother told me was accurate, but I don't know how I'll ever know which characters. Right now, I'm torn between choosing between two of Faulkner's characters. One was Cash Bundren, and he was selected by Barnes & Noble as one of the top 10 biggest fictional martyrs. Or probably more likely, Bentley Compson, who was selected by Barnes & Noble as one of the 10 biggest fictional morons. So I wonder which one of those is more likely to have been modeled upon one of my ancestors.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. So Faulkner fans would really like this. I think this is a good one. Well, what do you think about learning all that?
Well, it was what I find a lot of times is when you come across a story and you say, well, that can't be true, or that doesn't make sense. It usually turns out that there is truth in the story. It's just been exaggerated. And to sort of figure out what's the exaggeration and what's the truth is a big part of the fun in what I do, getting to play detective. Sometimes you can unravel it, sometimes you can't.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. I love these stories. I think they're just so interesting and timely. And I think all of us are related to have some sort of interesting story. And I like how you're able to dig these stories up. For folks who would like to dig those stories up in their own ancestry, how can they find you?
The easiest way is to go to dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's just the word ancestors with a D in front, dancestorsgenealogy.com. And then you can also go to our YouTube channel, which is Ancestors Genealogy. There's tons of great material in both places, video testimonials from happy customers. And there's a lot of educational material on there also that can help you prepare to research your family's history, or to find out why you might want to hire somebody like Ancestors to help you out with it.
Awesome, Dan. Well, you're a top class act. Glad to have you in here and can't wait to see you back in studio.
Thank you. I look forward to it also, Ashley.